A soft rain had been falling since late afternoon, the kind that never truly announced itself. It simply settled over the streets, coating rooftops and sidewalks with a dull silver sheen, until the whole neighborhood looked quieter than usual. Before we begin, welcome to the channel. If heartfelt stories about ordinary people, difficult choices, and the moments that quietly reshape our lives mean something to you, consider subscribing. Every new subscriber and every like helps these stories reach people who enjoy thoughtful storytelling built on emotion rather than spectacle. Now let me tell you about a night that seemed completely ordinary. At least, that's what I believed at the time. My name is Alicia Andret, and even after all these years, speaking about this chapter of my life still feels strangely difficult. Not because it is scandalous, not because it contains dramatic twists around every corner, but because it forced me to admit something I had spent years pretending wasn't true. Loneliness doesn't always arrive after someone leaves. Sometimes it grows while everyone you love is still living under the same roof. It doesn't knock on the door. It quietly moves into the empty spaces between conversations. It settles into dinners where nobody really talks, into mornings where everyone is rushing somewhere else, into evenings where people share the same house but not the same lives. Looking back now, I understand that families rarely fall apart in a single day. Most of the time they slowly drift. Tiny disappointments become habits. Conversations become shorter. Smiles become polite instead of genuine. One day you wake up realizing you've been surviving together instead of truly living together. I wish I had noticed sooner. I wish I had understood what those little moments were trying to tell me. Because if I had, perhaps things would have unfolded differently. It was a Friday. Nothing about that morning hinted that it would stay with me for years afterward. The alarm rang at 6:30 like it always did. I made coffee while the house remained wrapped in silence. The smell filled the kitchen, but instead of feeling comforting, it simply reminded me how quickly every day seemed to disappear. I glanced toward the hallway. Elena's bedroom door remained closed. Jonathan's backpack was already sitting near the front entrance where he'd carefully placed it the night before. He liked being prepared. He always had. Some children worried about cartoons or video games. Jonathan worried about forgetting homework, forgetting permission slips, making someone disappointed. He was only 12, yet sometimes he carried himself like someone much older. Then there was Elena, 16 years old, brilliant, funny when she wanted to be, protective of her little brother, even when she pretended not to care. But somewhere during the previous year, she had started building invisible walls around herself. Every answer became shorter. Every conversation became a negotiation. Every attempt I made to get closer seemed to push her another step away. I told myself it was simply adolescence. Everyone said teenagers eventually returned. So I waited. Perhaps longer than I should have. By 8 o'clock I was already sitting behind my desk at work. Emails multiplied faster than I could answer them. One meeting blended into another. Phone calls interrupted reports. Reports interrupted lunch. Lunch barely happened at all. People often assume single parents become experts at balancing everything. The truth is much less impressive. Most of us simply learn which responsibilities have to be dropped first. Sleep, hobbies, friends, exercise. Then eventually, pieces of ourselves. There were days I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something simply, because it made me happy. Every decision revolved around someone else's needs. Bills, groceries, school schedules, medical appointments, unexpected expenses. The invisible mathematics of keeping a household functioning. It wasn't glamorous. It was survival. And survival has a way of consuming every ounce of energy you possess. By the time I finally left work, the sky had already begun growing dark. Traffic crawled. Windshield wipers swept back and forth in steady rhythm while red brake lights stretched endlessly ahead. I remember gripping the steering wheel and thinking about dinner. Maybe tonight would feel different. Maybe we'd actually sit together. Maybe Jonathan would tell me another strange fact he'd learned in science class. Maybe Elena would laugh at something. Maybe, for just one evening, we'd remember what our family used to feel like. Hope is funny that way. It survives even when experience tells it not to. When I unlocked the front door, the The familiar scent of home greeted me. Laundry detergent. Tomato sauce. A faint trace of vanilla from the candle Elena insisted made the house feel less depressing. Mom. Jonathan called from somewhere upstairs. I'm home. A few seconds later he bounded down the stairs with the same energy only children seem capable of maintaining after an entire school day. You're late. I know. You missed my story. I did. I'll tell you during dinner. I smiled. Deal. Moments like those mattered more than he realized. They reminded me that despite everything, pieces of childhood still existed inside our home. Elena appeared more slowly. One earbud remained in place. She offered a small nod instead of a greeting. Hey. Hey, I answered. School okay? It was school. Not exactly informative, but lately that counted as progress. I wanted to ask more. Instead, I let the conversation breathe. Sometimes pushing only made her retreat further. She disappeared back upstairs without another word. I watched her go, wondering when our conversations had become so carefully measured. There had been a time she couldn't wait to tell me every detail of her day. Now I celebrated receiving a complete sentence. Dinner was simple. Pasta. Garlic bread. A salad I secretly knew nobody except me would eat. Nothing fancy. Just enough to bring us together around the same table. At least physically. Jonathan was the first to sit down. He immediately began describing a class experiment involving magnets and paper clips. His excitement filled the room in a way adults often forget is possible. And then Mr. Harris said gravity wasn't even the most interesting part. Really? I smiled. Really? His eyes sparkled. For a moment, I forgot how tired I was. Then Elena arrived. She sat quietly, placed her phone face down beside her plate, and started eating. No complaint. No smile. Just silence. Not angry. Simply distant. There's a difference. One still hopes to be understood. The other has already stopped expecting it. I didn't recognize that difference back then. I wish I had. Halfway through dinner, Jonathan frowned thoughtfully. Mom. Yeah. Why does your pasta taste different every time? I laughed softly. Is that a complaint? No. He looked genuinely puzzled. I'm just wondering. I twirled my fork before answering. Because cooking isn't like solving a math problem. It isn't. No. Sometimes I add a little more garlic. Sometimes less. Sometimes I cook while I'm distracted. Sometimes while I'm happy. And sometimes while I'm exhausted. So every dinner carries a little bit of whatever kind of day I've had. Jonathan considered that with complete seriousness. So, I'm eating your emotions? I couldn't help laughing. I suppose you are. For one beautiful second, the room felt lighter. Then I heard Elena sigh. Not loudly. Just enough to remind us she was somewhere else entirely. The fragile warmth that had begun forming around the table faded almost as quickly as it had appeared. None of us argued. Not yet. But I could feel something invisible settling between us again. The conversation slowed. Forks scraped quietly against plates.